I stood in the rain outside my son David's mansion, watching my daughter-in-law Jennifer celebrate inside. 3 days ago, David died in a car accident. Yesterday, Jennifer inherited everything and threw me out, telling me to go die in a dumpster. But I held a recording device, having captured something Jennifer said to her sister while drunk at David's wake. The confession about her affair with David's business partner and their plan to finally be free once David was gone made my hands shake. The rain continued to fall as I sat in my car, the recording device heavy in my pocket. My mind drifted back to better times when life made sense and my son was still alive. I raised David alone after my wife Sarah died of cancer when he was just 12 years old. Those early years tested every ounce of strength I had. Working double shifts at the factory while making sure David had hot meals, help with homework, and someone at every baseball game. The house always felt too quiet without Sarah's laughter, but David and I managed to build our own rhythm. David was brilliant from the start. While other kids played video games, he taught himself programming on an old computer I bought at a garage sale. By high school, he was creating apps that caught the attention of tech companies. I remember the day he got accepted to Stanford with a full scholarship. We celebrated with pizza and root beer floats, just like Sarah used to make. After graduation, instead of taking the safe corporate job everyone expected, David started his own company in our garage. For 2 years, he lived on ramen noodles and determination. I mortgaged the house to help fund his dream, despite everyone saying I was crazy. But I believed in my son. That belief paid off when Next Gen Technologies bought David's company for $78 million. He was only 35 years old. The first thing he did was pay off my mortgage and buy me a new truck. The second was to move me into the guest house on his new estate, saying he wanted family close by. Life was good until Jennifer entered the picture 2 years ago. David met her at a charity gala for children's cancer research, something we attended every year in Sarah's memory. Jennifer was there as a struggling artist, displaying paintings for the silent auction. She wore a simple black dress, but carried herself like royalty. David was smitten immediately. At first, Jennifer seemed perfect. She laughed at his nerdy jokes, showed interest in his work, and even pretended to enjoy the Sunday dinners we shared. But something felt off from the beginning. Maybe it was how her smile never quite reached her eyes, or how she always steered conversations back to David's money. "Dad, you're being paranoid," David would say when I expressed concerns. "Not everyone has ulterior motives." 6 months later, they were engaged. Jennifer wanted a massive wedding at the most expensive venue in the city. David, who usually lived modestly despite his wealth, agreed to everything she wanted. The wedding cost more than most people's houses, and I noticed Jennifer's family was conspicuously absent. She claimed they were estranged, but offered no details. After the wedding, changes came fast. Jennifer convinced David to update his will, giving her full control of everything should something happen to him. She hired new lawyers, ones I'd never heard of, to handle their affairs. Family dinners became less frequent, always canceled at the last minute for various reasons. "She needs time to adjust to our family dynamic," David explained during one of our increasingly rare lunches. Jennifer didn't have a close family growing up. The isolation grew worse over their 18-month marriage. Jennifer always had reasons why I shouldn't visit. The house was being renovated. They were hosting important clients. She wasn't feeling well. David's calls became shorter, more distracted. The son who used to share everything with me suddenly had walls I couldn't penetrate. 3 weeks ago, David surprised me by showing up at my door alone. He looked tired, older than his 37 years. We sat on my porch with beers, watching the sunset like old times. "Dad, I need to tell you something." He started, then stopped. We sat in silence for several minutes before he shook his head. "Never mind. It's probably nothing. Just promise me you'll always be okay, no matter what happens." Those were the last words my son ever spoke to me. The call came at 3 in the morning. David's Mercedes had wrapped around a tree on the winding road leading to his house. The police said he must have been driving too fast and the rain lost control on a curve. No skid marks, no attempts to brake, just impact. I rushed to the hospital, but Jennifer was already there playing the grieving widow to perfection. Mascara ran down her cheeks as she sobbed into Roger Harrison's shoulder. Roger was David's business partner, someone who'd appeared in their lives shortly after the wedding. I'd never liked how familiar he seemed with Jennifer, but David had insisted Roger was brilliant at managing investments. As I sat in that sterile waiting room watching Jennifer's performance, something cold settled in my stomach. The doctor emerged to tell us what I already knew in my heart. David was gone. That's when I heard it. Jennifer thought I'd stepped outside, but I'd only moved around the corner. She was on her phone, voice low but clear. "Yes, everything worked perfectly," she said. "The insurance papers were signed last week, $200 million policy. We just have to play this right for a few more days." My blood turned to ice. This wasn't grief, this was calculation, and my son was dead because of it. The funeral arrangements became a battle I wasn't prepared to fight. Jennifer took control of everything with ruthless efficiency, blocking me at every turn. When I suggested David would have wanted a simple service, she overruled me with elaborate plans for a massive social event. David was an important man. She said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We need to honor that with a proper goodbye." What she meant was she needed to perform her grieving widow act for the largest possible audience. The funeral home became her stage. She selected the most expensive casket, the largest flower arrangements, and insisted on a reception at the country club David had barely tolerated. Every decision seemed calculated to drain money from the estate, while establishing her as the devoted wife. Brian Chen arrived the day before the service. David's college roommate had flown in from Seattle as soon as he heard the news. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years, but he pulled me into a fierce hug outside the funeral home. "Michael, I'm so sorry," he said. "This doesn't make sense. I just talked to David last week." We found a quiet coffee shop away from Jennifer's circus. Brian looked troubled as he stirred his coffee, choosing his words carefully. "David called me recently," he began. "Said he needed advice about something delicate. Michael, he was planning to divorce Jennifer." The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hands. Brian pulled out his phone, showing me email exchanges with David from the past month. My son had discovered irregularities in their joint accounts. Money disappearing transfers to accounts he didn't recognize. When he confronted Jennifer, she'd blamed hackers and identity theft. "He hired a forensic accountant," Brian continued. "Found out Jennifer had been moving money to offshore accounts. Nearly $3 million over the past year. He was gathering evidence for the divorce lawyer." My chest tightened. If Jennifer knew David was onto her, if she realized he was planning to leave her with nothing, the wake that evening was a masterpiece of manipulation. Jennifer greeted mourners in a designer black dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension dabbing at Dry Eyes with a handkerchief. She spoke of David in reverent tones, painting a picture of marital bliss that bore no resemblance to the truth Brian had revealed. I kept to the edges of the room watching. That's when I noticed the woman who didn't fit. She stood near the bar, similar features to Jennifer, but harder edges, drinking steadily. When Jennifer spotted her, genuine emotion flickered across her face for the first time. Fear. They whispered furiously before Jennifer grabbed the woman's arm, steering her toward David's study. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding. The door didn't close completely, leaving a gap I could hear through. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Jennifer hissed. So this was the sister Jennifer claimed she was estranged from. Rachel's laugh was bitter. "Couldn't miss my brother-in-law's funeral, could I? Especially when I know what really happened." "Keep your voice down," Jennifer snapped. "You're drunk." "Not drunk enough to forget what you're capable of, Jen, just like with Marcus." That was an accident and you know it. Sure it was. Just like this is an accident. How convenient that David dies right after updating his insurance. Jennifer's voice turned cold. I don't know what you're implying, but you need to leave. Now. Relax, sister dear. I'm not here to cause trouble, just wanted to remind you to be careful. Check that special clause in the will before you get too comfortable. Remember what happened with Marcus. History has a way of repeating itself. I pulled out my phone, activating the recording app, as their voices grew louder. Jennifer had been drinking too, her careful control slipping. I don't need your warnings, Jennifer slurred. Everything is under control. Roger and I have planned this for 2 years. Every detail, every contingency. David's brake line was so worn it was practically begging to snap. Just needed a little help. My hand shook as I held the phone steady. This was it. Confession. You always were too confident, Rachel said. That's what got you in trouble before. Don't call me when this blows up in your face. It won't blow up. I'm not the same naive girl from 10 years ago. This time I've got the best lawyer's money can buy, David's money specifically. Once the will is read, I'll have everything. The old man can't touch me. The old man? You mean Michael, Jen? He's not stupid. He's been watching you. Jennifer's laugh was ugly. Michael is a washed-up factory worker who can barely use email. What's he going to do, contest the will with what money? Besides, after tomorrow, he won't even have a place to live. I'm throwing him out of the guest house. Let him see how far his principles get him on the street. You're evil, you know that. I'm practical. David was sweet, but boring. Roger knows how to live. We're going to travel, invest in real opportunities, actually enjoy the money instead of hoarding it like David did. Speaking of which, Roger's waiting for me. This grieving widow needs comforting. Their footsteps approached the door. I slipped into an adjacent room, my mind reeling. 2 years of planning. The brake line. Roger. Everything Brian suspected was true and worse. When I emerged, the wake was ending. Jennifer had returned to her performance, accepting condolences with practiced grace. Roger stood too close, his hand occasionally brushing her back, in a gesture meant to seem supportive, but was clearly intimate to anyone really looking. Rachel had disappeared, leaving only the echo of her warnings about the will. What special clause? What happened with someone named Marcus? I had more questions than answers. But one thing was crystal clear. My daughter-in-law had murdered my son, and I had the recording to prove it. The will reading was supposed to happen the day after the funeral, but Jennifer postponed it, claiming she needed more time to grieve. What she really needed was time to secure her position. Over the next 2 days, she moved with corporate efficiency to take control of every aspect of David's life. I watched from my guest house window as locksmith trucks arrived at the main mansion. Security codes were changed. New staff appeared loyal to Jennifer rather than the family. The housekeepers who'd known David since he bought the estate were dismissed with minimal severance. On the 3rd morning after the funeral, I woke to pounding on my door. 3 moving men stood on my porch with empty boxes and garbage bags. Mrs. Harrison says you need to be out by noon, the lead mover announced, looking uncomfortable. We're here to help pack your things. I stood in my doorway, processing the cruelty. Did she say where I'm supposed to go? The man shifted nervously. She just said to get you out. I'm sorry, sir. We're just doing our job. I could have fought them, but what was the point? These men weren't my enemy. I spent the morning packing 30 years of memories into boxes. Photos of David growing up. Sarah's cookbook collection I'd kept all these years. The Father's Day cards David made in elementary school. Each item felt heavier than the last. Jennifer appeared just as they were loading the last box. She wore one of David's college sweatshirts, a calculated insult that made my stomach turn. Roger flanked her, no longer pretending to be just a business partner. Michael, she said with mock sympathy. I know this is difficult, but I need space to process my grief. Having you here is just too painful. You understand? Where exactly am I supposed to go, Jennifer? She shrugged, the gesture containing years of practiced indifference. That's not really my concern anymore. Is it David's gone, which means our connection is severed. You're not my family. You're just the father of my late husband, and frankly, your presence here is inappropriate. Inappropriate. I helped build this life David had. This was my son's home. Was, she emphasized. Now it's my home, and you're trespassing. Roger stepped forward, trying to look intimidating despite being half my size. You heard the lady. Time to go, old man. Something snapped inside me. Not violence, but clarity. They wanted me angry. They wanted me to make a scene, give them ammunition for whatever legal battles might come. Instead, I looked Jennifer directly in the eye. I know what you did, I said quietly. Both of you. For just a second, fear flashed across her face before the mask slammed back down. I have no idea what you're talking about. Now get off my property before I call the police. Our property, baby, Roger corrected, wrapping his arm around her waist. Don't forget you promised to add me to the deed once this old fool is gone. Jennifer's elbow to his ribs was sharp but subtle. Not now, she hissed. But the damage was done. Roger had revealed too much, and we all knew it. You're not welcome here anymore, Jennifer said, her voice turning vicious. Go die in a dumpster for all I care. David wasted too much money keeping you comfortable. That ends now. The movers looked horrified, but continued loading my belongings into my truck. As I climbed into the driver's seat, Jennifer delivered one final blow. Oh, and Michael, don't bother trying to contest anything. David's will is ironclad. I made sure of that. Every penny, every property, every asset is mine. You get nothing. Just like you deserve. I drove away without another word, watching in my mirror as she and Roger walked back into David's house, arm in arm. The image burned itself into my memory, fueling the cold determination growing in my chest. That night, I slept in my truck in a rest stop parking lot. My back screamed from the uncomfortable position, but physical pain was nothing compared to the grief and rage battling in my heart. David was gone. His killer was sleeping in his bed, spending his money, living his life with her accomplice. I must have dozed off around 3 a.m. because my phone's ringing startled me awake. The caller ID showed Walter Brennan, David's lawyer. Not the new ones Jennifer had hired, but the family attorney who'd handled our affairs for 20 years. Michael, thank God you answered. Walter's voice was urgent. I've been trying to reach you. Where are you? In my truck. Jennifer threw me out yesterday. A long pause. She what? She can't do that. Listen, Michael, you need to come to my office immediately. There's something about David's will that Jennifer needs to know, and she's not answering my calls. Why should I care what Jennifer needs to know? Because, Walter said carefully, David was smarter than any of us gave him credit for. Just come to my office. Bring any documentation you have about the last few weeks. And, Michael, you might want to bring that recording I'm betting you made at the wake. My blood chilled. How did you know about that? Because I know you, Michael, and I knew David. He told me if anything happened to him, you'd be the one to find the truth. 9 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in the dim morning light. Walter knew something. David had planned something. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Jennifer thought she'd won everything. But maybe my son had outsmarted her from beyond the grave. Walter Brennan's office occupied the top floor of a building David had helped finance years ago. I arrived at 9 sharp, feeling every one of my 68 years after sleeping in my truck. Walter's secretary, Martha, who'd known our family for decades, hugged me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry about David, she whispered. None of this makes sense. Walter appeared in his doorway looking like he'd aged a decade in the past week. His usually crisp suit was rumpled, his silver hair uncombed. He ushered me into his office and locked the door behind us. Coy. Coffee. He offered, already pouring 2 cups. You look like hell, Michael. Feel worse. What's this about Walter? He sat heavily behind his desk, pulling out a thick folder. 6 months ago, David came to me with concerns. Said Jennifer was acting strangely, asked me to look into some financial irregularities. I told him he was probably overreacting, but he insisted. Brian told me David hired a forensic accountant. He did more than that. Walter opened the folder revealing documents, photographs, and USB drives. He hired a private investigator, one of the best. What they found: Michael, your daughter-in-law, is not who she claims to be. My coffee cup trembled as I set it down. What do you mean? Her real name is Jennifer Blackwood, not Jennifer Martin, as she told David. She's been married before. In fact, she still is married. Her first husband, Marcus Blackwood, is serving a life sentence in federal prison for murder. The room spun slightly. She's still married. Then her marriage to David is completely invalid. Bigamy is a felony, Michael. But it gets worse. The investigator found connections between Jennifer and Roger Harrison going back 5 years. They're not just lovers. They're partners in a series of insurance fraud schemes across 3 states. Walter spread photographs across his desk. Jennifer and Roger at restaurants, hotels, even at a courthouse in Nevada 2 years before she met David. My stomach churned, looking at the evidence of their long deception. There's more, Walter continued. Remember the will Jennifer pushed David to sign? She used her own lawyers, but David came to me afterward. He was suspicious but couldn't prove anything yet. So we created a special provision. He pulled out a legal document pointing to a highlighted section. The will contains a felony clause. If Jennifer is convicted of any felony within 5 years of David's death, she forfeits everything. The estate reverts to a trust David established. A trust? One that you control, Michael. David named you as the sole trustee with complete discretion over distributions. He wanted to make sure the money went to worthy causes if something happened to him. I sank back in my chair, overwhelmed. He knew she was dangerous. He suspected, but he needed proof. Walter's expression darkened. The investigator was getting close to something big when David died. Too close, apparently. I have proof, I said, quietly pulling out my phone. Jennifer confessed at the wake. I recorded everything. Walter listened to the recording, his face growing paler with each word. When Jennifer's drunk voice admitted to tampering with the brake line, he had to pause it. Dear God, he breathed. She confessed to murder. What do we do now? Walter was already reaching for his phone. I have a friend at the district attorney's office, Detective Patricia Coleman. She's been looking into David's accident anyway. The lack of skid marks bothered her. Within an hour, we were in a conference room at the police station. Detective Coleman, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, listened to the recording multiple times. She took notes, asked precise questions, and called in additional officers. This is good, she said finally. But we need more. A drunk confession at a wake might not hold up in court. We need physical evidence. What about the brake line? I asked. Already checked. The damage was too severe to determine tampering definitively. But with this recording, we can get warrants. Search their finances, communications, the house. Walter leaned forward. There's something else. David left a safety deposit box. He gave me a key the week before he died, said to only open it if something happened to him. Detective Coleman's eyes sharpened. Where is it? First National Bank. We'll need a court order to open it. I'll have it within the hour. She turned to me. Mr. Harrison, I need you to stay quiet about this for now. Don't contact Jennifer or Roger. Let them think they've won. The more comfortable they feel, the more mistakes they'll make. It was the hardest thing I'd ever agreed to, but I nodded. David deserved justice, and that meant playing this smart. 3 hours later, we stood in the bank's vault as the manager opened David's safety deposit box. Inside was a USB drive, a sealed envelope addressed to me, and another envelope marked, for the police. Detective Coleman opened the police envelope first. It contained printed emails between Jennifer and Roger discussing the plan, photographs of them meeting with someone identified as a mechanic, and bank statements showing large cash withdrawals. The USB drive contained something even more damning, a video recorded by David himself. We watched the video in a secure room at the police station. David's face filled the screen, looking directly at the camera, with eyes that held fear but also determination. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 2 weeks before his death. "If you're watching this, then something has happened to me." David began, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "And despite what it might look like, it wasn't an accident." I gripped the edge of the table, hearing my son's voice again, an agony I hadn't prepared for. Detective Coleman placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, but kept her eyes on the screen. "My name is David Harrison. I'm recording this on October 15th, 2025, because I believe my wife, Jennifer, and her associate, Roger Harrison, are planning to kill me." He held up documents to the camera. "What I'm about to show you is evidence I've gathered over the past 3 months." David methodically presented his case. Bank statements showing Jennifer's secret transfers, screenshots of text messages between her and Roger she thought were deleted, photos from the private investigator showing them meeting with Marcus Blackwood's former associates. "I hired a forensic data recovery specialist," David continued. "Jennifer thought she was being careful, but she didn't know I had tracking software on her phone. Legal software installed with her consent when we set up the family plan, though I doubt she remembered agreeing to it." The recovered messages were damning. Jennifer and Roger discussed timing methods and how to make it look accidental. They mentioned the brake line, specifically having researched which mechanic shops didn't keep security footage. "This is Tommy Rodriguez," David said, showing a photo of a young mechanic. "Roger paid him $5,000 cash to damage my brake line during my last service. Tommy doesn't know I know. I've been driving carefully, avoiding the mountain roads, but I can feel the brakes getting worse." Detective Coleman paused the video, already pulling out her phone. "We need to find this Tommy Rodriguez immediately." David's image continued when she pressed play. "I've been pretending everything is normal while gathering evidence. Jennifer thinks I'm oblivious, but I know about Marcus Blackwood. I know she's still married to him. I know about the 3 elderly men who died mysteriously after marrying women connected to Jennifer and Roger's circle." My blood ran cold. 3 others. "I should have listened to my father," David said, and tears pricked my eyes. "He saw through Jennifer from the beginning. Dad, if you're watching this, you were right. I'm sorry I didn't believe you." The video shifted to show more documents. Insurance policies Jennifer had tricked him into signing. Powers of attorney giving her control of everything. Changes to corporate structures that would funnel money to offshore accounts upon his death. "I've taken precautions," David continued. "The will she thinks controls everything has been superseded by a trust she doesn't know about. Walter Brennan has all the real documents. The house, the money, everything she thinks she'll inherit will go where it belongs if she's found guilty of any crime." He looked directly at the camera again, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. "I'm going to the police tomorrow. I have a meeting scheduled with Detective Coleman at 2 o'clock. But I wanted this video as insurance. If something happens before then?" He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. "Jennifer's getting suspicious. She knows I've been asking questions. Last night Roger showed up unexpectedly and made some veiled threats about accidents happening to people who don't mind their own business. I'm scared, but I won't let them win." The final part of the video was David speaking directly to me. "Dad, I love you. Everything I built was because you believed in me when no one else would. Take care of the company, donate to Mom's cancer charity, help kids who need a chance like I did. And please don't blame yourself for any of this. You tried to warn me. I just had to learn the hard way that some people are capable of evil I couldn't imagine." The screen went black. The room sat in stunned silence until Detective Coleman spoke. "He never made it to our appointment. The accident happened that morning." I found my voice with difficulty. "You knew he was coming." "He called to schedule it but didn't give details. Said it was about his wife and financial crimes. If I'd known—" She shook her head. "We're going to get them, Mr. Harrison. both of them. The sealed envelope addressed to me contained a handwritten letter and a smaller key. The letter was brief. Dad, if you're reading this, then my worst fears came true. The small key opens a locker at the bus station. Locker 447. Inside is everything the police might miss. I love you. Take care of yourself. Your son, David. Detective Coleman sent officers to retrieve the locker contents while she began coordinating arrests. The evidence was overwhelming, but she wanted everything in place before moving. That evening, as I sat in a hotel room the police had arranged for my safety, the news broke. Tech millionaire's widow and business partner arrested for murder. Jennifer's perfectly made-up face stared from the television screen as officers led her away in handcuffs. But the best part was Roger. He'd been at the mansion comfortable in David's study when SWAT showed up. The footage of him trying to flee in his underwear only to be tackled in the marble foyer would become internet legend. Jennifer's reaction, however, was pure rage. She screamed about her rights demanded her lawyers, and when she spotted news cameras actually spit at them, the grieving widow mask had finally shattered completely. My phone rang. Walter's name appeared on the screen. Michael, you need to know something. Jennifer's been calling the office non-stop from jail. She's desperate to talk to you. Why would I talk to her? Because, Walter said with something like satisfaction in his voice, she just found out about the felony clause. And Marcus Blackwood's first husband just filed for his share of what he considers their marital assets. She's about to lose everything, and she knows it. I looked at David's photo on my phone background, taken at last year's 4th of July barbecue. He was smiling carefree, unaware of the danger sleeping in his bed. Let her call, I said. I want to hear her beg. Jennifer's first call from jail came at 6 in the morning. I'd been expecting it, but the shrill desperation in her voice still caught me off guard. Michael, please, you have to help me, she began without preamble. This is all a misunderstanding. I loved David. You know I loved him. Is that what you told Marcus Blackwood too? I asked calmly. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke again, the pretense had evaporated. How did you find out about Marcus? David found out. He knew everything, Jennifer. The bigamy, the insurance fraud schemes, Roger. He documented it all before you killed him. I didn't mean for it to happen that way, she said. And for the first time I heard real emotion in her voice. Fear. It was Roger's idea. He said it would be quick, painless. David wouldn't suffer. You discussed my son's death like a business transaction. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Marcus's family, they wanted their cut. Roger owed people money, bad people. We just needed capital to start fresh. So you murdered my son for money. It wasn't supposed to be murder, she screamed. Just an accident. But then David started asking questions, hired investigators. Roger panicked. He said we had to accelerate the timeline. I recorded every word just as Detective Coleman had instructed. Jennifer, in her panic, was filling in blanks we hadn't even known existed. The story that emerged over the next days was even darker than imagined. The investigation revealed Roger Harrison wasn't even his real name. He was actually Roger Kovach, a con artist with warrants in 2 states. His investment firm was a shell company designed to launder money from their previous schemes. Tommy Rodriguez, the mechanic, flipped immediately when arrested. Barely 21, he'd been desperate for money to help his sick mother. He provided receipts, text messages, even photos Roger had made him take of the tampered brake line. His testimony would be crucial. But the real bombshell came from Marcus Blackwood's lawyer. Jennifer hadn't just married Marcus. She'd been his partner in crime for years. The FBI had been building a case against their insurance fraud ring when Marcus got sloppy and ended up killing a witness. Jennifer had testified against him to avoid prosecution, then disappeared with the money they'd stolen. She owes my client $2.3 million, the lawyer informed the court. Half of their illegally obtained assets, which she's been hiding for 7 years. The media circus was incredible. Every news outlet wanted the story of the grieving widow who'd murdered her millionaire husband. Jennifer's carefully crafted image disintegrated as former associates came forward with stories of her past schemes. Rachel, her sister, gave an exclusive interview that aired nationally. She revealed Jennifer's pattern went back to high school when their grandmother died mysteriously after changing her will in Jennifer's favor. "I always knew she'd kill someone else eventually," Rachel said, looking directly at the camera. "I tried to warn people, but Jennifer was too good at playing the victim." Roger tried to cut a deal offering to testify against Jennifer in exchange for a lighter sentence. His lawyer painted him as a small-time crook who got in over his head, manipulated by a master manipulator. The prosecution wasn't buying it. During Roger's interrogation, which I watched through a two-way mirror at Detective Coleman's invitation, he revealed the full extent of their plan. They'd targeted David specifically researching wealthy tech entrepreneurs with minimal family connections. My son had seemed perfect, one parent, no siblings, known for being trusting. Jennifer spent months preparing. Roger admitted. She studied everything about him. His favorite charities, his mother's death, his relationship with you. She knew exactly what to say, how to act. It was like watching an actress prepare for the role of a lifetime. The trial date was set for spring, but the civil cases began immediately. The IRS launched an investigation into the offshore accounts. 3 insurance companies filed suits to recover fraudulent payouts. Every day brought new legal troubles for Jennifer. From jail, she continued calling anyone who would listen. When I wouldn't answer, she tried Walter, Brian, even Martha at the law office. Her story changed constantly. First, she was innocent. Then she was coerced by Roger. Then she claimed temporary insanity brought on by grief over Marcus's imprisonment. The most pathetic moment came when she tried to hire a new lawyer with promises of payment from David's estate. "Don't you understand?" the lawyer told her in a conversation she didn't know was being recorded. "You have no estate. The felony clause voids everything. You're not just broke, Ms. Blackwood. You're millions in debt from the lawsuits." That's when Jennifer truly broke. The woman who'd played my son like a fiddle, who'd planned his death over champagne and caviar, was reduced to a sobbing mess in a county jail cell. But I felt no pity. Every tear she shed was one my son would never cry. Every day she spent behind bars was one David would never see. The forensic accountants found more than anyone expected. Jennifer and Roger had stolen close to $8 million through various schemes over the years. They'd left a trail of elderly victims, broken families, and suspicious deaths across 5 states. "Your son might have saved lives by documenting all this," Detective Coleman told me one afternoon. "We're connecting them to 3 other suspicious deaths now. Without David's evidence, they would have kept going." It was cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. David's death, terrible as it was, had stopped a pair of serial killers who used marriage instead of guns. As winter approached, Jennifer made one last desperate play. She claimed to be pregnant with David's child, hoping to claim inheritance rights for the baby. The court-ordered medical exam revealed the truth. Not only was she not pregnant, but medical records Roger foolishly kept showed she'd had a tubal ligation years ago. Another lie exposed. Marcus Blackwood himself testified via video link from federal prison. Even hardened criminals have codes, and murdering innocent spouses for money violated his. He provided dates, account numbers, and details about Jennifer's involvement in their earlier crimes. "I thought I was teaching her the game," Marcus said with something like regret. "Turns out she was always better at it than me. Colder. I never killed, nobody didn't deserve it. Jenny, she'd kill her own mother for the right price." The FBI agent assigned to the case told me privately that Jennifer was looking at life without parole, possibly federal death penalty, if they could prove the interstate conspiracy charges. Roger would get 25 to life if he was lucky. But as satisfying as their legal troubles were, I found myself thinking more about David's wishes. He hadn't wanted revenge. He'd wanted his money to help people. It was time to honor that. The trial began on a cold March morning. I sat in the front row every single day bearing witness for my son. Jennifer entered the courtroom in shackles, her designer clothes replaced by a jail jumpsuit. The beauty that had entranced David was gone, replaced by hollow eyes and premature gray streaking her hair. Roger was tried separately, his lawyer still pushing the manipulated accomplice angle. But Jennifer's trial was the main event. The prosecution presented David's video testimony, first letting his own words tell the story of discovery and fear. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom except Jennifer's. She stared straight ahead, emotionless. When the recording of her wake confession played, several jurors visibly recoiled. Her own voice drunkenly admitting to planning David's death for 2 years was devastating. Her defense attorney tried to argue intoxication and grief, but the calculated nature of her words was unmistakable. Tommy Rodriguez testified with tears streaming down his face. "I needed $5,000 for my mom's chemo," he sobbed. "Mr. Roger said it was just to make the car break down, teach the rich guy a lesson. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know someone would die." The judge had to call a recess when Tommy collapsed, overwhelmed by guilt. He'd already pled guilty to manslaughter and would serve 3 years, but the real weight was knowing his actions had killed an innocent man. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed Jennifer and Roger's money trail going back years. The FBI presented evidence linking them to 2 confirmed murders and 3 suspicious deaths. Phone records revealed constant communication in the days before David's death, including a chilling text from Jennifer. "Tomorrow's the day. Make sure it's done right." Jennifer took the stand on day 12. Her attorney had advised against it, but her ego wouldn't let the narrative go unchallenged. She wore a conservative suit someone had donated, trying to recapture the grieving widow image. It didn't work. "I loved my husband," she began, but prosecutor Sarah Chen cut her off. "Which husband, Ms. Blackwood? David Harrison, whom you killed, or Marcus Blackwood, whom you're still legally married to?" The cross-examination was brutal. Chen methodically destroyed every lie using Jennifer's own words from various recorded conversations. When confronted with the evidence, Jennifer's mask finally slipped completely. "You don't understand what it's like," she snarled at the prosecutor. "Growing up with nothing, watching rich people waste their money. David had $78 million and lived like a monk. I deserved better. I earned that money by putting up with his boring existence." The courtroom gasped. Even her own attorney looked horrified. Jennifer realized her mistake too late, trying to backtrack, but the damage was done. She'd shown the jury her true face. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. First-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, bigamy, and 12 other charges. When the judge read, "Life without the possibility of parole," Jennifer screamed, "This isn't fair. I'm the victim here. Michael set me up. He planted that evidence." Court officers dragged her out as she continued shrieking accusations. The last image of Jennifer Blackwood was her expensive hair extensions being pulled out as she fought against her fate. Roger's trial was quicker. Faced with overwhelming evidence and Jennifer's testimony trying to pin everything on him, he changed his plea to guilty. 25 to life, with the possibility of parole after 20 years if he cooperated fully with authorities. With the trials over, I could finally focus on honoring David's true wishes. Walter helped establish the David Harrison Foundation, dedicated to funding technology education for underprivileged youth and supporting cancer research in Sarah's memory. The estate, once valued at $78 million, had grown to nearly $90 million, thanks to David's smart investments. We sold the mansion where he died, using the proceeds to build a technology center in the inner city. The guest house I'd been evicted from became a transition home for aged-out foster kids learning coding. I kept only what I needed: a modest apartment near the foundation offices and enough to live comfortably. The rest went to changing lives, just as David would have wanted. 1 year after the trial, I stood before 300 people at the first David Harrison Innovation Awards. 20 young entrepreneurs presented their ideas, competing for funding and mentorship. The winner was a young woman who'd aged out of foster care and taught herself programming on library computers. Her app connected homeless youth with resources and safe spaces. "David would have loved this," Brian said, standing beside me as we watched her accept the award. He'd joined the foundation board, helping evaluate technical projects. "He really would have," I agreed, thinking of my son's excitement when he'd started his own company in our garage. The foundation grew beyond my wildest dreams. We partnered with universities, tech companies, and other nonprofits. Kids who'd never touched a computer were building apps, starting companies, changing their communities. David's legacy lived on in every line of code they wrote. Jennifer sent letters from prison occasionally. The early ones were manipulative, still trying to convince me of her innocence. Later ones grew increasingly desperate, begging for money for her commissary account. I never responded, but I kept them as reminders of how close evil had come to winning. Roger was killed in prison 3 years into his sentence. Apparently, he'd tried running a con on the wrong people. Jennifer, now truly alone, would spend the rest of her life in a federal maximum security facility. Marcus Blackwood died of a heart attack shortly after Jennifer's conviction. His family never got their money, as the authorities seized all traceable assets. The only winner from their years of schemes was the justice system that finally caught them. I visited David's grave every Sunday, updating him on the foundation's work. The headstone was simple, just as he would have wanted: David Harrison, beloved son, technology pioneer, philanthropist. We gave away $2 million in scholarships this month. I told him one sunny afternoon, "Kid from Detroit got into MIT thanks to you. Another one in Houston started a company that's already profitable. You're changing the world, son, just like you always wanted." The wind rustled the oak trees Sarah had loved, and for a moment I felt them both with me. My wife and son gone too soon, but never forgotten. Their love had made me who I was, and now their memory drove me to help others. Detective Coleman visited, occasionally updating me on other cases Jennifer's conviction had helped solve. 3 families got closure for suspicious deaths. Several elderly victims recovered partial assets. Jennifer's capture had rippled out, bringing justice to people who'd given up hope. "Your son is a hero," Coleman told me over coffee. "Not many people would have documented everything like he did. He knew the danger, but thought saving others was worth the risk." 5 years after David's death, I stood at another gala. This time it was the 5th annual David Harrison Innovation Summit. Senator Williams was speaking about the impact of our programs on education reform. Tech CEOs who'd mentored our kids shared success stories, but the real stars were the young people themselves. Maria, who'd won our first award, now employed 50 people at her company. James, a former gang member, had created a virtual reality system for training emergency responders. Lisa, whose parents had died of cancer, was developing AI to detect tumors earlier than ever before. They gathered around me during the reception, these brilliant young minds who'd found their paths through David's foundation. In their success, I saw my son's spirit living on. Not the fortune Jennifer had killed for, but something far more valuable: hope, opportunity, and the chance to make tomorrow better than today. As the evening wound down, Maria pulled me aside. "Mr. Harrison, I need to tell you something. I was planning to kill myself the day I heard about your foundation's program. I had nothing, no future, no hope. Your son saved my life without ever meeting me. I just wanted you to know that." I hugged her, tears flowing freely. This was David's true legacy. Not the money Jennifer had schemed for, but the lives transformed by his generosity. In the end, Jennifer had been right about one thing: David had been too good for her. But she'd been wrong about everything else. His goodness hadn't been weakness. It had been strength that outlasted her evil love, that transcended death and wisdom, that turned tragedy into triumph. The evening ended with a video tribute to David. As his image filled the screen surrounded by hundreds of people his foundation had helped, I knew the truth: Jennifer might have taken his life, but she could never touch his legacy. Love had won. It always does in the end. So I ask you, have you ever witnessed justice served in your own life? Sometimes it takes patience and faith, but truth has a way of surfacing. If this story touched your heart, please share it with others who might need to hear that good can triumph over evil. Like and subscribe if you believe in the power of justice and redemption, and comment below with your own experiences of seeing wrongs made right. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the love we share and the good we do outlive us all. May you find peace in knowing that truth and justice, though sometimes delayed, are never truly denied.